Rittenhouse was fortunate here. He was very lucky that he had this judge who made certain rulings that put the prosecution at a disadvantage from the beginning. He would not allow any reference to the fact that he was with the Proud Boys. He would not allow a video that was online that showed Rittenhouse saying he would shoot shoplifters. And he would not allow any
because he didn't feel that was relevant
as rioters or looters.
Right now, I think we have Vinoo Varghese, who's a former prosecutor, and Ameer Benno, who are standing by for us once again. Ameer, let's start with you. Just your thoughts on what has transpired as we continue to watch outside of the courthouse.
Well, I think that things have been peaceful outside the courthouse, and we can pray that it stays that way. I do think that nightfall will probably be the litmus test. We'll see what happens, whether people come in from other communities to create some chaos. But hopefully, like Bob was mentioning, or you were mentioning, Heather, the temperature will be enough of a deterrent for that. But on the law, I think that the justice system worked the way it's supposed to work. And a jury heard the evidence, clearly deliberated long and hard over this. The trial had some hiccups, as all trials do. But at the end of the day, they rendered what I think is a just and fair verdict.
Vinoo, what are your observations here? And by the way, it looks like they're taking this person away.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're going to be all right, but not apparently a result of any physical altercations. And we don't know exactly the security situation there, but there don't seem to be any problems. We just want to keep tabs to make sure. But Vinoo, as you've watched this, what are your thoughts?
I think we should be careful about how much we read into this verdict. I think Rittenhouse was fortunate in a lot of ways. He had a judge who made a number of important rulings that went in his favor, such as not allowing the deceased to be called victims, to be allowed them.
Gentlemen, I think we have one of the Rittenhouse attorneys reacting. Let's listen in. Vinoo Varghese, and former federal prosecutor, and Ameer Benno standing by. Want to continue the conversation, Vinoo. We saw the reaction that Mark Richards had. He liked Judge Schrader. I think a lot of people expect judges to be something they're not. They turn out to be actually human beings. If you go in the courtroom, you learn that. And as a reporter, I learned they all have personalities, but he felt he did a good job. Did you feel the judge did a good job here?
Well, we were saying before we went to his conference, and by the way, I really liked his commentary. I thought it was very classy, and I think he handled it very well. That's Mr. Richards. What I was saying before we cut to him, and this is going to answer your question about the judge, is I think Rittenhouse was fortunate here. He was very lucky that he had this judge who made certain rulings that put the prosecution at a disadvantage from the beginning. He would not allow any reference to the fact that he was with the Proud Boys. He would not allow a video that was online that showed Rittenhouse saying he would shoot shoplifters. And he would not allow any
because he didn't feel that was relevant
as rioters or looters. So these are things that I think were relevant once he took the stand. That would not have been relevant if he didn't take the stand in the prosecution's case. It was also the fact that this was a Friday. So they were out, a decent amount of time, not a huge time. I've seen juries out longer. But this is also the Friday before Thanksgiving. There was going to be a verdict today. I had predicted it on some other networks last night. So, a lot of things worked in Rittenhouse's favor. And what also worked in his favor is that these prosecutors messed up. They didn't do a good job until they got to summation, where all of a sudden it was clear what their theory was. Throughout the trial, they made a number of mistakes on what I believe was a winnable case. So I know Professor Dershowitz was on earlier speaking that this case shouldn't have been brought. I think there was enough for the prosecution to bring the case, and I think it was winnable. And I just think that they really, the prosecution didn't do a good job until it was too late.
Yeah, we do have a comment that has come in now from the Kenosha County District Attorney, Michael Gravely. He issued this statement saying that we respect the jury verdict based on 3.5 days of careful deliberations. Certainly issues regarding the privilege of self-defense remain highly contentious in our current times. We ask that all members of the public accept the verdicts peacefully and not resort to violence. Ameer, do you think that the prosecution did a good job in this? I mean, I guess if they had done a good job, then the outcome wouldn't have been this.
I don't think that they did a good job on this case. I think that they did a lot of things wrong, frankly. I think that many of these charges shouldn't have been brought in the first instance. I agree with Mark Richards that they made some choices on putting on evidence that really calls into questions the ethics behind the prosecutorial decisions. And I agree completely that it seems like their motivation in bringing this case was to win. It wasn't about obtaining justice. It wasn't about getting a fair shake in a court of law. And that should never be what drives a prosecution. I think that there were shortcuts that they took on the evidence, and they flouted some very black letter basic rules of law. And but ultimately, the jury saw through that. And I think also their demeanor and the manner in which they addressed the jury was condescending. And I think it came across somewhat classist and elitist, that they know best.
Yeah, Vinoo.
And I think the jury saw through that. And to their credit, they were able to sift through all of that noise and get to the truth in the heart of the matter and render the correct verdict.
Vinoo, do you think the prosecution messed up when they brought on the witness, their witness, who essentially said that he did raise his gun toward Rittenhouse, and that's when Rittenhouse fired at him? That was their witness. Isn't there a rule that you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to?
Well, hopefully, I mean, presumably they knew that answer. The question then is exactly what you were just asking, is why did they bring that charge? And this is where I do agree with Ameer that there were certain charges they shouldn't have brought. In that situation, when the guy says he's pointing the gun and only was shot when he's pointing the gun, then that's enough for the prosecutor to say, you know what, we're not going to bring this charge. But going back to the first charge of Rosenbaum, who was chasing him, and apparently the worst thing he did was throw a plastic bag at him, I think that's a case that should have been brought. And then when you look at the test that they have in Wisconsin, which is the same test for self-defense here, is did Rittenhouse really believe he was in danger? And even if he did, was that belief reasonable when the guy was unarmed? So this, I believe, was a winnable case. I agree with Ameer that they took some shortcuts, and they also, look, if there had been a conviction, I think there would have been enough for the judge to set aside the verdict based upon prosecutorial misconduct. The commenting on the fact that Rittenhouse was silent after the arrest, after the incident, you know, that should never have been said in a court of law.
How can an attorney even say that? That's what Miranda is all about. Why would anybody even say that?
I think what happened to this prosecutor was that he listened to all the hype that was out there. And he didn't think he was going to win. And he gave into his own worst instincts and may have tried to throw the case at that point. But he was bailed out by the judge who didn't. Who bailed out by the judge who didn't grant the mistrial at the moment. But I think if there had been a conviction, this judge could have given a mistrial at the end of the case.
Yeah, I want to read this because Governor Evers, Tony Evers, has released a statement now about the Rittenhouse case. He says no verdict will be able to bring back the lives of Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum or heal Gage Grosskreutz injuries. Just as no verdict can heal the wounds or trauma experienced by Jacob Blake and his family, no ruling today changes our reality in Wisconsin that we have work to do toward equity, accountability, and justice that communities across our state are demanding and deserve. And it goes on from there. Very lengthy statement, and we'll bring more to you, more of that to you a little bit later. But obviously a lot of folks concerned about what is going to transpire outside of the courthouse. And as we've been watching it throughout the day, the crowd has remained about the same in terms of the numbers of people.
Right.
There was one medical incident where one of those folks, I guess, suffered a seizure. A little bit more information has become available. It had nothing to do with any type of violent incident outside of the courthouse. It was a medical issue, and they were taken away. But peaceful, by all accounts, which is what we hope will remain throughout the rest of the evening.
All right. Vinoo and Ameer, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more.